Storm recovery, searching for victims and hope in tornado-ravaged Kentucky, plus reaction from a Catholic leader whose diocese was devastated. MARIAN devotion, millions of Catholics return to a beloved Mexican shrine. Coronavirus mandates, masks for Mass during Christmas in two of America's largest archdioceses. And Gaza Christmas, lighting a tree in a land of conflict. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, December 14th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on the Feast of St. John of the Cross. I'm Owen Jensen, in for Tracy Sable. President Joe Biden declares disaster areas in two more states following that deadly tornado outbreak in the central U.S. Illinois and Tennessee now join Kentucky as states eligible for federal aid.
FEMA has teams of urban search and rescue and emergency response personnel in Kentucky supporting search and rescue efforts, along with disaster survivor assistance teams to help survivors register for assistance.
President Biden will visit Kentucky tomorrow to get a briefing and view the storm damage firsthand. Over 400 National Guard members have been called in to help. Many are still looking for missing victims. The tornado outbreak killed at least 88 people, 74 of them in Kentucky. And across Kentucky, about 24,000 homes and businesses were still without electricity today. Recovery efforts have begun as state officials race to find shelter for Kentuckians, warning those in the state it may take weeks to restore heat, water, and power. And joining me now is Bishop William Medley from the Diocese of Owensboro in Kentucky. Bishop Medley, welcome very much. Thank you for appearing on our show tonight, Your Excellency. Please tell us about the damage you're seeing in Kentucky.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be here. At least 4 counties in western Kentucky, which are part of the Diocese of Owensboro, have experienced 10 or more fatalities. Any one of those would be the story of the year here. So to multiply that is just staggering. 2 of those communities are Catholic churches have experienced some damage. The church in Dawson Springs is likely going to be a total loss. The church in Mayfield has some significant damage, but is probably repairable. But of course, it's the people's lives immediately right now that we're thinking about. Thousands are left homeless. Thousands more are inconvenienced because power and water are not available. I traveled Sunday to Graves County, which is where Mayfield is. The Church of St. Joseph is the community in Mayfield, but that community gathered outside of Mayfield at a town called Fancy Farm at St. Jerome Church, where we celebrated Gaudete Sunday, and we celebrated the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is especially significant because in the last couple of decades, that small Catholic community has become predominantly an Hispanic community. I'm going tomorrow to visit several different parish sites and to observe the recovery efforts and to affirm and bless the workers who are trying to respond to the immediate human needs. So there's just been a great outpouring of support for us and prayer. We actually know that Pope Francis on Sunday, in his prayer of the Angelus in St. Peter's Square, prayed for Kentucky by name. And that warmed my heart. And I know as more and more Kentuckians are aware that that happened, it will warm their heart as well. I also received a note from the Holy See expressing the Pope's compassion and closeness with those who are suffering at this time. So there's been a lot of good voices come to us in a very, very dark and difficult time.
Well, we are all praying for you. The entire nation is rallying around you. You can better believe that. The members of your diocese, outside of the basics, food, shelter, and heat, what else do they need right now at this moment?
Well, food, shelter, and heat are most essential right now. Housing, I think in your lead-in, you said that 24,000 people were still without power.
That's right.
Some of that's going to be very long-term. For example, in the town of Mayfield, the local water tower was toppled. So restoring water service there could take weeks and weeks. So it could be that people whose homes weren't damaged may themselves have to relocate because of utilities. The greater need will come later when we're trying to help those who lost their homes reestablish themselves, because in many cases, and not surprisingly, this would probably be true in any place in America, a lot of those people are poor, quite poor.
And people's faith, you know, it's shaken at times like these, right? How you as a faith leader, how do you get people to stick with God and to keep faithful and to stay faithful despite all the horrific damage and in some cases lives lost and people injured?
Well, I mentioned that I went to Graves County to gather with St. Joseph Parish. That was an inspiration for me to see people come and want to be together in this terrible tragedy when they had lost family and friends, when they had lost their homes. So at the end of that Mass, the local pastor, Father Eric Riley, primarily addressing the Hispanic community, said, "Vivo Cristo Rey," Christ the King, long live Christ the King. And the community answered 3 times, "Vivo, vivo, vivo." So that gratified me to see that people were grounding themselves in faith, even in a moment of just unimaginable harm.
In some of the reports I've been reading and seeing, it's going to take not just weeks, months, but potentially years for your area of the country to recover. How can people living outside donate or get involved to help in the recovery efforts? Obviously, money. What other ways would you advise?
Right now, it would appear that these communities are sort of overwhelmed with material goods that are being brought in: clothing, water, food. Now, getting those to the proper people is a challenge that we can only figure out on the local level. But we had a special collection among all of our churches in this diocese Sunday to help those affected communities. The coming weekend, the other dioceses of Kentucky and Tennessee are having such second collections. So if anybody wants to help us, financial help is probably the most pragmatic and gives us a lot of versatility in the short run to begin making grants. I've assured our pastors that if there are immediate needs, to meet them, and that we're going to get the support from all over the country. So I want to thank people for that, and they can do that by going to the website of our diocese, and then there's an opportunity to click and make a contribution there, or we tell them how to mail a contribution to the Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Owensboro.
Bishop Medley, you are in our prayers. Stay strong, please. The whole country, again, is pulling for you. You're gonna make it through this, and God bless you for your work down there.
I thank you. I thank you especially for those prayers. God bless you.
All right. Meanwhile, back in Washington, a deal struck between party leaders will allow for raising the nation's debt limit by $2.5 trillion. Has no GOP support in the Senate, but it is expected to soon head to the president's desk.
No brinksmanship, no default on the debt, no risk of another recession. Responsible governing has won on this exceedingly important issue. The American people can breathe easy and rest assured there will not be a default.
But Republicans are sounding the alarm on excess spending.
If they jam through another reckless taxing and spending spree, this massive debt increase will just be the beginning. More printing and borrowing to set up more reckless spending, to cause more inflation, to hurt working families even more.
Majority Leader Schumer says he wants to vote on the Build Back Better Act before the holidays. Pope Francis has approved a miracle attributed to Blessed Marie Riviere. The miracle involved the healing of a newborn baby who had a buildup of fluid around her lungs and heart. The French nun is now on the path to canonization. Pope Francis has agreed in principle to meet with the commission which reported on church sexual abuse in France. The announcement comes following a papal audience with members of the French Bishops' Conference. A commission report released in October estimated some 330,000 victims of sexual abuse in the church between 1950 and 2020. A meeting date has not been set with commission members, but Pope Francis expresses complete availability. France's interior minister is condemning those who attacked a MARIAN procession in Paris last week. Faithful Catholics were honoring the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. A small band taunted them with death threats and threw water against them. The French minister called the intimidation unacceptable. The Vatican's Synod of Bishops has restored a link to a video from a group doing outreach to same-sex attracted people. Last week, the link from New Ways Ministry was removed. Officials say they took down the link after learning the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops had disapproved of New Ways back in 2010. For more on this story, including reaction from Synod officials on the apparent reversal regarding New Ways Ministry, just visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Since the beginning of December in Mexico City, almost 2 million pilgrims have visited the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Even with COVID restrictions in place, the return of pilgrims has been a contrast to last year when COVID-19 forced the basilica to close. The annual shrine pilgrimage recalls the hillside apparition of the Virgin of Guadalupe to St. Juan Diego on December 12, 1531. The feast day honors her as patroness of Latin America's Catholics. In Afghanistan, the survivors of a U.S. drone strike last summer still seek accountability and evacuation. Family survivors reacted to news that there would be no discipline for U.S. troops from the strike, which killed 10 people, including 7 children. It followed the suicide attack against Kabul airport, which killed 13 U.S. troops and 169 Afghans during the U.S. withdrawal. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. does not want conflict in the Indo-Pacific, but while in Indonesia, he also laid out some of what he called Beijing's aggressive actions.
Claiming open seas as their own, distorting open markets through subsidies to its state-run companies.
The Secretary of State added the U.S. will expand its military and economic relationships with partners in Asia. China did not like that and responded, saying Secretary Blinken's comments showed the U.S. was contradicting itself by playing up the so-called China threat on the one hand, while claiming that it has no intention to seek conflict with China on the other. Coming up, mask mandates. See which dioceses are adding COVID restrictions for the holiday season. And Supreme Court decision, the religious freedom case that has left some healthcare workers unemployed. Catholics in Boston and New York City will have to follow mask mandates to attend Mass for Christmas and New Year to protect against the coronavirus. The Archdiocese of Boston begins its mask mandate this Saturday through January 17th. Now, the Archdiocese of New York will follow the recently implemented statewide mask mandate. We have analysis tonight after the Supreme Court allows a vaccine mandate to stay in effect in New York. Healthcare workers asked the court to intervene, and although the justices were split on the decision, the court will allow the mandate to stay in place without, this is key here, without providing religious freedom exemptions. And joining me now to discuss is Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, Director of the Conscience Project. Andrea, good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me.
So here we go again. My head is spinning like a lot of Americans. You know, we go through this pandemic, we got rulings here, rulings there. Sum up just in layman's terms, what happened yesterday?
Well, Owen, this is the second time in less than 2 months that the Supreme Court has not prohibited or barred a vaccine mandate from going into effect that lacks a religious exemption for healthcare workers. This is a really troubling trend that we're seeing, and it's surprising because the Supreme Court has been very pro-religious liberty, especially involving pandemic restrictions.
I think people looking at that, yeah, they would say, I thought we had a conservative court. So you're surprised, right? But it was the 3 dissenting were Gorsuch, Thomas, and Alito dissenting. That's only 3 in my count there, right? But so that's what you're surprised at, right?
It's a bit surprising. Now, obviously, the first issue is the procedural posture of this case. It wasn't a case where there was full briefing, oral argument. It isn't looking at the merits of the challenges to the mandate itself. It was a request for emergency temporary relief. So that may be one of the reasons why Justice Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh decided to side with the majority. That's what they said the last go-around involving Maine's vaccine mandate as well.
So people, in this case, may lose their jobs over this, right?
You know, there's a definite Hobson's choice, right? You can either lose your job, especially these medical professionals who have been there since the beginning of the pandemic, serving patients and caring for them, or they may have to go against their conscience. And these, the people that have filed suit are objecting to the vaccine mandate on the basis of its connection with abortion. And so even though many mainstream Christian religions and Catholic Church in particular have said there's no problem with a connection, these individuals believe that there is, and their individual consciences are being tested by this requirement.
Are you concerned that this could set a precedent for something going forward? I mean, throughout this pandemic, we've seen, churches shut down early on, masses limited. I think the concern of many, I would argue, is that the pandemic is forcing the faithful sort of into a corner. I mean, the pandemic, unfortunately, seems like the tyranny of the virus, if you will, is winning.
That's a really good observation. And we saw this before when we were dealing with restrictions on mass attendance and worship numbers. The court really in the very beginning was anxious to step in and intervene on these executive orders and these governor rules. But eventually they did say that, the Constitution and its protections are there even in times of the pandemic. So although these two decisions involving Maine and New York are a disappointment, I think eventually the Supreme Court will rule on the merits in favor of the responsibility of providing objections for religious objections.
Right. And so, I go to church every Sunday, and for folks out there who go to church and they have strong faith and they try to follow the church rules, and you try to be your best Catholic you can, and then you get rulings like this, and you kind of throw your hands up sometimes. Say, so is there anything that just regular people can do other than maybe provide an amicus brief or something to the court? I don't know if that's even applicable in this case, but what's the average guy to do?
Well, first off, we need to pray. These are very difficult times, and there are a lot of challenges that are being placed on healthcare workers, on teachers. We need to pray for folks that are on our front lines. Mm-hmm. And second, we also need to recognize that this is a country where we really, from our beginnings, have been grounded in individual freedom, in liberty and religious freedom in particular. And so even if I, as a Catholic, may have no problem receiving a vaccine, which I have, I need to stand up for the right of other people to say, hey, wait a second, I've got some problems in this, and talk among our friends and really try to stop this tenor of divisiveness and go back to a system where we're really respecting one another's beliefs.
And one more thing here, switching gears a bit, and on religious freedom, I should add, you have a podcast, I believe, right, that focuses on that? How exciting.
Yes, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It is Religious Freedom Matters. Now, we did a pilot series this past summer with the Register, the National Catholic Register, and we've come up with another series, this time focusing on education. And we've brought in some incredible A-listers to talk about Catholic teaching, as well as some of the challenges that parents are facing today, where their religious beliefs are being kind of put out of the classroom, and new ideologies are coming in that are challenging what we know to be true about the human person, about human sexuality, and just about truth in general.
And how can people tune in?
So you can look and find all of the episodes at the National Catholic Register website. That's ncregister.org or .com, or you could also look at the Conscience Project website, which is conscience-project.org.
Excellent. Andrea, great to see you as always. And keep up the good work.
Thanks, Owen.
Okay. Well, moving on here now, a church in a tiny town in north central Kansas has received a major honor. St. John the Baptist Catholic Church in Beloit is the first parish in the U.S. to be designated as a star on the mantle of Our Lady, Queen of Peace. The inauguration Mass took place last Sunday. And Gaudete Sunday, that was. The honor comes from the international community of the Queen of Peace, and its mission is to pray for peace around the world. Beloit, by the way, has a population of 4,000 people. In Sunday's Mass, Bishop Jerry Vinke compared it to Bethlehem, where Christ was born. Up next, Christmas celebrations in the Gaza Strip. Members of the tiny Christian community there count down the lighting up of the Christmas tree. And Faith in Action, more on the group that has been serving the poor for 70 years. Christians celebrate the lighting of their Christmas tree in the Gaza Strip. Hundreds taking part in festivities at a Christian youth center last Friday. This is happening. There are few public celebrations in Gaza due to coronavirus restrictions and Hamas prohibitions. Israel recently said it would permit 500 Gaza Christians to honor Christmas at holy sites in the West Bank. Caritas Internationalis is celebrating the 70th anniversary of its foundation, operating in over 200 countries. Its mission is to respond practically to humanitarian crises. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Thonhauser has more from Rome.
Thank you. We're here at the headquarters of Caritas International in Rome, and with me is the Secretary General because we're celebrating 70 years of Caritas Internationalis. Why was it founded in the first place?
Caritas Internationalis was created by Pope Pius XII on the aftermath of the Second World War, when the whole of Europe was in disarray and in rubbles. The idea with which it was created was to bring support and bring service to the poorest and those who have been the victim of the Second World War. With this opinion, a certain number of church organizations, charitable church organizations came together, and they were the ones which is today Caritas Internationalis, which has grown to be major confederation with 162 member organizations. The essence of the work of Caritas since the beginning was to bring hope, to shine the work of charity, through the work of charity, bring hope to the people and serve the people and accompany them so that they live in dignity. And this is what is being lived today. Charity was the same 70 years back, and it's the same charity animating us. In other words, the gospel meaning of charity brings us to animate and support and accompany the poorest.
Accompanying the poor, that is also something that Caritas is doing today. What are the most pressing issues today that Caritas is facing?
Today, the most pressing issues are many. I would resume them in 3 or 4 important issues. The first one is 800 million people in this world today are going hungry. How do we support them? How do we enable them to have food security, have nutritious food? That's one key challenge. The second major problem is conflicts. In many places, conflicts are there, and the conflicts and food insecurity are interrelated. Because of conflicts, people leave their lands, and because of lack of land, they cannot cultivate, and they become poor. So that's one second issue. The third issue is everything that relates to climate change and environment. Today, Caritas is also addressing this issue through the global campaign which we started yesterday. And this global campaign will also help us to address how we care for Mother Earth, or how we care for our common home, and at the same time caring for the human person. And the last important issue is the vaccine. Today, our world needs good health, integral health, and this is where people need to be vaccinated. In the global south, only 3% of the global population of the global south is vaccinated, so we need to vaccinate them. So these are the issues which we will need to address in the future.
So very quickly, how can people support Caritas International?
That again is very easy. We have a website, and it's called caritas.org. You just click in and you can put your mite there.
And there you also find more information on the work of Caritas International on all levels in the whole global world, also how to support you on the parish level, but also the big advocacy issues that we've been discussing. And with that, I give back to Washington.
Thank you. Before we go, we want to share more nativity scenes sent in by you. This first one right here tonight comes from Dunmore, Pennsylvania. Kim and Joe Marchese sharing this beautiful crush on their mantel. That is beautiful. Saints Peter and Paul Catholic School in Omaha, Nebraska shows us their large nativity scene. Isn't that's spectacular. That is really cool. We head to Canada now to see Sam Seeney's outdoor creche with some great outdoor lights too. I bet you everybody in the neighborhood stops by there and just enjoys that scene. And a unique one in San Francisco, California. Frances Peterson shares her nativity banner. A very creative way there to honor Christ's birth when there isn't a front yard. It's just, it's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time of year. Now to share your picture, just send a picture to EWTN News Nightly at EWTN.com or to our Facebook and Twitter accounts. Just be sure, please, to include your name and location, and you could see it featured right here on EWTN News Nightly. Thank you again very much. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Owen Jensen. Good night, and God bless.